Greetings. We're back on the record here at the Select Board's special November 9, 2016 meeting to discuss the second application for the town to take over Bittersweet Lane as a public road. And we also have another item on tonight's agenda, which is a request to modify a right-of-way at John Sykes Drive in the Exit 1 Industrial Park. We convened the meeting at 4:30 and went up for a site visit at Bittersweet Lane. Our proceedings at Bittersweet Lane were not recorded, and any information that the board's going to be considering with respect to the Bittersweet Lane application is going to be presented at the public hearing. So unless there's other business to take care of, I'm going to open the public hearing with respect to the application that the town take over Bittersweet Lane as a public road. And by way of brief introduction, what I'll note is that during the summer, we had a previous application to take over Bittersweet Lane. That application was handled in conjunction with two other questions, whether the town should be taking over or giving up public or land for a public right-of-way, or giving it up as a public right-of-way, including Minshaw Street and Wickapee Hill. And we made decisions on all three. The board decided not to take over Bittersweet Lane for the reasons that were set forth in the board's decision, which was issued, I believe, in August. And we're now here for a second hearing on that same application. So I think what we'll do is we'll start by asking if anybody wants to speak to any matter relating to this application that the board take over Bittersweet Lane for the purposes of the public hearing. So if either of you want to identify yourself and take the microphone, because it'll be amplified for the television. Are we just recorded tonight, or are we live?
They should step up to the mic. We're live. Yeah.
We're live. Okay. So if you want to speak to any matter relating to this, it would be a good time. Hi, Peter. If you want to identify yourself for the record.
Peter Bomeg from SVE Associates and Osmo Industries, who are the developer of the subdivision of question. And first of all, we want to thank the selectmen for rehearing this matter. In 2007, the developer and the town entered into an agreement in regard to items that the developer needed to do, and the town at that point would, if he met these requirements, the agreement was to the effect that the town would consider taking over the road. And it's not much different than many other development agreements the town has formed with other developers over the years. I think at this point, everybody's in agreement that the developer has done what he was required to do, and that one of the items in the agreement was that 3 houses had to be constructed on the property before the town would consider taking over the road. Those 3 houses have been constructed, and therefore we're in front of the selectmen asking for the town to do that, take over the road. Some of the items that you may not be aware of that were kind of special in this agreement, at least from the developer's point of view, were some items the town requested the developer to do as part of development that really weren't required per zoning and subdivision regulations. And those items were paving the road. The subdivision regulations did not require paving of that road because it was far enough from any other town paved road at the time to be approved through the subdivision regulations. But the developer agreed to do that as part of the development agreement. In addition, The fire department asked that the houses that are constructed up there have residential sprinkler systems in them. And that was put into the agreement also, which really isn't part of the subdivision regulations either. So those are a couple special things that were done. And the reason I bring those up is because any type of agreement is a back and forth discussion between parties, and once that agreement is met, both parties have a feeling that that's the way it's going to proceed. And certainly that's what we're asking for. A couple other things I might mention. I think there's probably some concern about the town plowing a road for 3 houses, essentially. And that's, we should point out that the taxes on that property, those properties are equal, I think, $34,000 a year, of which a portion of that is the town's, I think, to the tune of about $18,000, or approximately that. Obviously, the road and so forth are in really great shape, and it's certainly not costing the town that type of money to maintain the road. And I realize there's other portions of the town uses for that money also, but just as a indication of where we are monetarily. And certainly, if you have any questions of us, we'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you, Peter. Anybody on the board have any questions for Mr. Bowman? Thank you. Is there anybody else who's here with us who wants to speak to the application for the board to consider taking over Bittersweet Lane as public right-of-way? I'll note that a resident of Bittersweet Lane, whose name is
Sandy Mather?
Sandy Walther, pointed out to the board when we were at the site visit that the cross-country ski trail up to the upper field runs to the east of this road, and that it runs over a number of the parcels in the subdivision, and she pointed out that there's some public use of the general area that she thought the board should consider when making the decision whether to take over the right-of-way. She indicated something about potentially parking up there for that purpose, but I think parking for the ski area is actually down below at the golf course hut. But she did note that there's public use of that area that takes place, and she thought we should consider that as part of the deliberations. Dave?
The other point that Mrs. Walther made was that the high school cross-country meets that take place up there in the meadow, the East Orchard Street gets parked up pretty quickly, and there's no shoulder there, so it's not the best parking, and very often a half dozen or more cars will come down and park along Bittersweet Lane as well.
Thanks. I didn't hear that one. So if there's anybody else who's in attendance if there's nobody else who's in attendance who wants to speak to this, then I guess we'll take comment from the board as part of the public hearing. Dick?
Steve, did you certify that the road was built to town specs?
Yes.
And there isn't anything that I could find in our documentation? Is there something in here that says it was?
I sent a letter originally to the town manager, I believe, and it went to the select board. I sent a letter on January 22nd, 2016 to the Brattleboro Selectboard.
Right.
And it basically states that I'm recommending the town of Brattleboro accept Bittersweet Lane as a town highway, and that they met the requirements that were spelt out in the development agreement.
That's at the 5th page of the backup for tonight's meeting, and it says in the middle of the memorandum, Bittersweet Lane meets the required specifications for a town roadway and has 3 occupied homes.
Okay, thank you.
Right, so there's a July 18, 2012 memo
Yep,
that came way before the request to
right.
take over the road that certifies that it's been constructed
yep,
consistent with town specifications.
yep,
Yeah.
correct.
Anybody else on the board have anything to add at this point? So what I'll note is that the prior decision that the board made to not take over the road was primarily based on the question whether there was enough of public interest in taking over essentially a driveway to 3 homes that doesn't serve as a through road for any particular other access. And that was addressed more thoroughly in the written decision that's already in the public record, and I think that's also something that's considered for purposes of this public hearing. I asked the town manager's office whether we could gather up information addressing the number of private roads in the town of Brattleboro and the number of private roads that have homes along them, and if so, how many homes are on those roads, so that we could understand, when looking at the public interest, the extent to which our private roads that are not plowed by the town have 3 or more homes or 3 or less homes. So we could look at that for comparison purposes. And I want to thank Steve Barrett for doing a bunch of work today to gather up information. And Steve has prepared a color-coded road map for the town of Brattleboro that shows 3 different sets of data on it. As I understand it, the orange and the blue markings on the map are all the private roads in town. The blue markings on the map are the private roads that have homes on them. And next to all of the blue markings that show private roads that have towns on them, that have homes on them, is the number of homes on those private roads. And then there's also green markings on the map, which are public roads that have 3 homes or less on them. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna get that map, and we only got 1 copy color-coded like that. I'm gonna generally summarize what's shown on the map, since we don't have it in chart form. And then I'm gonna ask all other board members if they wanna look at it, and also members of the public if they wanna look, but I'm just gonna generally summarize what it shows. So, Steve, in total, about how many private roads are there?
It came up, there's approximately 106 private roads in the town of Brattleboro. There are approximately 70 that either have condos or homes. There's homes with streets or private streets or roadways with 3 homes. There's approximately 14. And then I also looked at town roadways that the Public Works plows that have 3 or less, and that was 30. So there are some existing roads that have 3 homes or less.
And so what I'll note, going through the map and looking at the blue markings, which are private roads with our private roads with homes on them, they range from 44 homes, 4 homes, 13 homes, 3 and 3, 8 homes on one, 18, 13, 6, 4, a couple with 2, 24, a number of 3s, 30, 3, 8, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 2. So there's a whole bunch of private roads that have 3 or more homes on them that are not maintained by the town. And then there's a series also of public roads that have just 2 or 3 homes. So One thing to note is that the way in which the town has proceeded with respect to these roads is not consistent.
So can I ask you a question with this, regards to this? Of all that you've gone through, how many of those roads, those private roads, have development agreements with the town?
How many of the
So if
roads
we're-
are over,
if
I
we're
have,
gonna- If we're gonna compare apples
Right.
to apples,
right.
then the issue is we have a development agreement here with Sursasimo. Do we have development agreements here with all these other private roads? Was there a development agreement when these were put in to say that they can petition the town? You can always petition the town. I get that. But here is an actual document that says we have a development agreement, and once we have 3 houses in that, within that agreement, we can petition the town. We can't do it if there's 2, we can't do it if there's 1, but once there's 3. And so everything that David is talking about, the question is, tell me how many of those parcels of property on these private roads have development agreements?
None that I know of. But I will say, there are some of these roads that were not built to town standards because they did not want the town to take them over. There's a lot of those. When you talk, I'm looking at McIntosh and Cortland, Apple, Peachtree Lane, Brett's Road. Those were all done where the developer did not want to expend the funds, and he wanted to build the roads, you know,
And I
at a
get
lesser
that,
standard.
and I understand that, but the issue here that we're talking about is trying to compare apples to apples. And this doesn't come forward to me as different towns, different streets, private streets. None of these have development agreements that you know of, or that we know of. So I would say that this isn't a fair assessment of towns that have an agreement with the town, that have come forward, and the town has said, no, we're not going to do it. I appreciate the work, it's a great understanding, but, you know, to me, it's like a moot point without going, yeah, development agreement, development agreement.
Can I just clarify, and forgive me because I didn't have much sleep last night, so none
And
of,
why is that?
didn't sleep all night. So none of these roads have development agreements?
None that I
So-
know of.
so is
Now,
this-
there's-
But, so does this mean this is the first development agreement? The town's?
No,
So-
there's some of these roads, and I'll tell you the last one is Summit Circle.
Right.
There was a development agreement, they went to the board prior to constructing it, they met with Public Works, they set up the criteria, the same as this development agreement that you're looking at. Once there was 3 homes built, they built it to town specs, and then the town took it over. There's layers and layers and layers and layers of roads here within the town that have been done that way.
Wait, but so there is
So-
a development agreement with people on Summit Circle?
That's
So
correct.
but we just said there weren't any development agreements
No,
with
the
any of
question
those.
is, with the private roads, are there development agreements
okay.
with private roads, was the question.
And there isn't?
Not
So-
that I'm aware of.
So this would be the
but-
first one?
But, no,
Oh.
but the other part of that, some of these roadways were built with development agreements that state they're not gonna be taken over by the town, okay? There's some private roads that people did a development with 3 to 7 houses that they did not want the town to take it over. In some cases, they just didn't want to be on a town road. In other cases, the developer didn't want to expend the extra money to build it to town specs.
Okay, so this is the
Hold on,
first?
Wait.
Yep,
Wait.
okay.
I want Kate to finish that discussion so she gets it clarified.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Then
so
we'll call the
this
next
would be, this is the first private road where there's a development agreement that says the town can take the road if they want. I mean, that's basically what you just said, isn't it?
Bob?
I think that's what Steve said. I'm not sure if that is
Right.
100% correct. I can't disprove him
Right.
without doing the research in the land records. You'd have to go through each of these
Right.
developments. But the flip side of it, too, is that there are probably other town-maintained roads that serve 3 or fewer, that aren't that were never built to town specs. They may be very, very old roads.
That's right.
That serve, 1 house or 2 houses. So you've got that other bit, and we just haven't done full research on every road that's marked on your map there to know what the agreements are or are not. So sorry, we just don't have the answer for that.
Thank you. Dick?
The best example I'm going to give you is High Point.
At Summit Circle.
Summit Circle.
No, High Point, is that the one on the top of,
Yeah, so it's-
Yeah,
that
Same thing.
same thing? That they call it Summit Circle?
The road is Summit Circle.
The road is Summit
Development is
Circle.
High Point.
Yeah, I mean, to me, when they did that development agreement, they have 5 houses up there?
3.
Yeah, 3.
3, 1, 2, 3.
They're building a 4th.
They're building a 4th. And how many, and that's, how much, how long is the road up there? It's gotta be over a mile.
Yeah, I would say it's approximately a mile.
originally that was 36 lots, right?
That's correct.
36 lots with no homes. We're
Right,
talking
no,
about,
it's-
we're talking about a lot with 7 homes, and what's the footage?
I'm not sure exactly what the,
Yeah, we have
we
it
do
here.
have the mileage.
You finished?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, if we're gonna make some analogy here about comparison and cost impact, Summit Circle certainly has a huger impact on the board than what we're doing right here with the Sursasimo property.
So I'm just going to note, and this is a matter that also will be addressed when we have our deliberative session, that I respectfully don't agree that the development agreement question is particularly dispositive about our decision here. I don't think it's really a distinguishing factor when looking at the data that's been presented to us and that's been gathered by the director of the Department of Public Works. The inquiry I had when we were asked whether to take over this road was, what is the public interest in taking over the road, and to what extent is it served by taking over the road? And factors that I looked at included, among other things, how many homes are served, and does it serve to connect other roads, one road to another? And in trying to ascertain what was the scope of the public interest in the town maintaining the road, what was at issue for me was, are there other private roads that have this many or more homes? That is important to me because what's being presented to us is a proposal that the town should plow a 3-home road. And I want to know if we have other 3-home roads that we don't plow, or 4 or 10 or 20 foot or 20 home roads that we don't plow. So I understand that you feel that the existence of a homeowner's agreement or an agreement with the town is an important factor. And all I'm saying is I respectfully disagree with that position. I'll also note that the agreement that was executed and negotiated specifically provides for what happens if the town decides not to take over the road, and it provides that a homeowners association will then be responsible for maintenance of the road. So I understand Mr. Bomig's position, and I've heard Mr. Barrett say to us that it was written this way, but there was a general expectation that the road would be taken over if 3 homes were built and it was built to town specs. And that respectfully is not exactly what the agreement says, and we're now a board that needs to decide if this is in the public interest, and that's what we're going to be deciding. Peter?
A couple things to add, and they may not relate directly to what you said, Dave. One is that the roads that haven't been taken over by the town don't meet town specs. I think I think in general, that's a true statement. And that's one of the reasons the town wouldn't take them over, because there would be additional maintenance and so forth. and it wouldn't actually be fair to everybody else either, quite frankly. In regard to the question about development agreements in this town go way back. I mean, I've been doing this for 40 years. I don't know how many I've been involved in, but I can name you a few. Exit 1 Industrial Park, Ames Brook subdivision. Sir Sosmo has one on up on Putney Road. Well, they haven't executed it, but they have an agreement, Chicken Drive. Sherwood Hollow, those all had development agreements. There's been development agreements on many, many developments in this town. When I worked on the Abbott block with BDCC and so forth, we had a development agreement with the town. And, you know, the reason for development agreements is so everybody's on the same page and everybody agrees. And when somebody does one thing, and which is on the agreement, you expect the other person to do the other, and that's, of course, where we're sitting at this point. If you don't have agreements ahead of time, how are you going to know? I mean, how is a developer going to know whether he should build a road to town specs or not? Because he doesn't know what to expect. I mean, you know, that's the reason you do this, so everybody understands what's going on and can make decisions, both from the town and the developer's point of view. And it's been going on forever.
Thank you. Sure, Dave.
Thanks, Peter, that's a helpful point. I think that with this, in this issue, there's clearly not a pattern that we could draw from in terms of what's happened in the past, or is there even a pattern? There isn't. I think this is a specific agreement, and as you said, David, it's the decision is whether it's in the public interest. And part of the public interest is people having accurate expectations in terms of what's going to happen.
Dick?
So one of the things that we certainly have found out this evening is public access up there on this road and at Bittersweet. And I would suspect on all the other private roads that you have there that there isn't public access onto the property to get to trails and or to anywhere else. One of the things that was important to us in our deliberations on Wikipedia Hill is that the public have access, that we didn't just make that a private road and that the public couldn't go up into Wikipedia Hill. And I think here it was, again, you made mention of it, but residents spoke to us about access for cross-country running, cross-country skiing, and the public parking up there. I think that's a significant factor here in taking this under consideration.
As somebody who's cross-country skis up there 5 days a week, 6 days a week in a good winter, I will note that access to the ski trails is not through Bittersweet Lane. Access to the ski trails and to the cross-country trails is directly off of East Orchard Street through the driveway into the cornfield. And what I understood the resident to be saying is that there is public recreation that happens nearby, but there isn't access to those ski trails for the public through Bittersweet Lane, not the way I've seen it, and not for the cross-country trails either. Sounds like sometimes people park on Bittersweet Lane when it backs up, and parking backs up on East Orchard Street. Kate?
Can I say something? And I respect what you just said about the development agreement and everybody needing to understand what everybody's doing, but it doesn't say in the development agreement that the town will take the road. And I think maybe that's an well, not even an oversight, but maybe this is something that when the town and a developer is making an agreement, it's more clear. You know, and I think just because something has been done, you know, the way it's been done, but it's not written in the agreement, that's sort of where, you know, I start this whole thing, that it really isn't in the agreement that the town will take it over. There may have been something going on between it, but, you know, I wasn't here how many, 9 years ago when this was signed, so I have to base this on what's written here. So I just need to get that out, that, I don't know how these things go on going forward, but for somebody who's looking at it, to me, it's not an issue of something was agreed upon, and if we make the decision otherwise, then we're wrong, because it doesn't say it in the paperwork that we have.
Any other comments for right now? All right, so the process that we're going to follow is the same as the one we followed last time. Bob, you'll correct me if I'm wrong. We have 60 days from the close of the public hearing to issue a written decision on the application to take over Bittersweet Lane. And we have 4 select board members here, and it is possible that the 5th member of the select board also may want to participate in our decision on this matter, and it'll be incumbent on him to watch the half hour worth of discussion that started about 5 or 10 after 5, and that is now concluded at 20 to 6. So unless I hear that there's some other information to be presented at the public hearing, I'm going to close the public hearing, and there is a motion on the table, which is for the town to, in essence, take over Bittersweet Lane as a public road. And I now move to enter deliberative session with the intent to provide a written decision on whether the layout, I'm sorry, I'm going too fast, on whether to lay out the property that was a subject to the public hearing on Bittersweet Lane with any conditions the board may consider, with the written decision to be issued within 60 days. We have a motion. Is there any discussion on that motion to enter deliberative session? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 4-0, and we'll also be inviting John Allen into the deliberative session, even though he's not here tonight. I want to thank you for coming and for raising the issue for a second time after the first decision, so we have a chance to look at it. And we'll look forward to talking about it in deliberative session and then to issuing our decision.
Just one
Bob?
process, as far as your deliberative session, you've moved to enter it, but are you going to set a specific date of when you are going to actually deliberate, or are you going to do that right now? Only
No,
insofar
we'll-
as we have another item on the agenda.
No, we'll set a date for deliberative session in the future. We're not going to do that tonight. We want to make sure to give the other board member an opportunity to review what's been presented and then to participate with us. So I believe we'll need to include deliberative session on an agenda for a publicly warned meeting when we schedule it, but that's not going to happen tonight.
Great, thank you.
Dick?
Just a point of clarification, because I don't know. I know you said you invited John. Do you have to put the caveat in there to participate in the deliberative session if he so watches? Does that have to be in the motion?
I think I've already said it clearly that that's something that has to happen for him to be able to participate.
Certainly for him to participate, he will need to review the
The
tape.
question is, does it need to be part of the motion? I know what he said.
Yeah.
I don't think it needs to be part of the motion. Because he can come to deliberative session and listen, but not be allowed to vote or,
That's
you know,
correct.
if he doesn't know what the evidence
So
is.
that's fine. We'll make sure he does anyway.
Thank you. All right. So the next item on the agenda for tonight, and this is part of the exhibits, that's part of the public hearing record. So there's another item on tonight's agenda, which is possible modification of the right-of-way for John Sykes Drive in the Exit 1 Industrial Park. And I'll note that we only received our materials about this when we came into the room today. So I'm going to ask Peter and Steve to explain where we're at, and then the board will have to make a decision whether we're prepared to proceed tonight or whether we need to put it off till next Tuesday. Peter?
Quick question, Peter, did we talk about this ever?
Briefly. Yeah.
Very briefly in
Yeah, I don't
executive
remember the
session.
time.
Right.
Oh, okay, that was.
Very
Yeah,
That was
briefly.
my question.
Mainly as just a heads up that there would be
Yes, thank you.
this item coming forward, and I wasn't sure exactly when, but I knew it would be with short notice, and so I wanted to make sure you didn't weren't blindsided.
Whether
Yep.
we were on the same
Yep.
planet. Okay, thank you.
So the location that we're,
And I'll note it was proper in executive session because it had to do with real estate matters and contracts.
That's right. The request before you is to actually quit claim a town interest in a portion of a right-of-way at the top of the hill at the Exit 1 Industrial Park. So that it is in that context that we had a very brief conversation one evening in executive session. What's before you this evening in public session is the outcome of meetings and site visits that we on the staff have had and with the town attorney with various parties that have an interest in the development of a solar array on the downslope hill that's on the back side of the extreme south side of the Exit 1 Industrial Park in the town of Guilford. There is a right-of-way that travels along the crest of that hill. Once you've gone up John Sites Drive from Route 5, up through the industrial park, and you arrive at the very top of that hill where the town has a water tank, and there are some other facilities. There is a right-of-way that exists up there that's 50 feet wide, 25 feet of which is in the town of Brattleboro and 25 feet of which is in the town of Guilford. The request that came to us approximately 3 weeks ago, I believe, was for the town to quit claim a portion of what was on the Guilford side, but within the right-of-way to which the town holds an interest, in order to allow a portion of the array and the perimeter fence for the array to be built in what is currently that right-of-way. We objected to that initially because of the concern that we had in the way it was originally presented to us, that it would negatively affect both the town's ability to take heavy equipment up into that area to do maintenance that's required from time to time on the water plant, or the water tank rather, and then also for potential future development of the northernmost industrial lot that's part of the industrial park, that it may be appropriate or necessary to access that northernmost lot from this right-of-way, although there are alternative plans that could potentially provide a road further down the hill that would come up from a different route to that uppermost lot. So the potential future use of it as a public right-of-way is more fairly debatable, but we knew we had an interest we needed to protect in terms of the town's access to the water tank site for maintenance. We've had several iterations of this map that's before you. We've had several different meetings where we've discussed, well, what if we did this or what if we did that? And the meeting of the minds, approximately a little less than a week ago, was what's before you today. And I'll just summarize that quickly and then ask that if you want to take any deeper dive into it, that Steve Barrett speak to the operational implications of this, and that Bob Fisher speak to the legal documentation of it and what's being asked of you in terms of an official action tonight. But in the map that's before you, the survey that's before you, the yellow highlighted portion is the right-of-way that we would be quit claiming. You can see in the left portion, there's a complete set of solar panels that would be installed there that are the northernmost row of panels for this array. And down along near a letter C that's in a circle, about 2/3 of the way to the right-hand side of what would be quit claimed, you can see that there's a portion of the second northernmost row of solar panels that also would be in this, what is currently right-of-way, and would be private property if we go forward with the action this evening. One of the things we discussed along the way was the possibility that these portions of the array might be allowed to be installed with an agreement that they would be removed if the town ever needed to use that portion of the right-of-way. We frankly don't think that we would need all of it. If at some point some of this right-of-way is needed for further development, we don't think that we'd need to go all the way to the southernmost boundary of the 50-foot right-of-way. But not being able to predict the future, we wanted to have the ability to have that portion of the array be moved if necessary. We learned that that's impossible from the point of view of the financing for the project and the private interests that are involved. And so then we fell back to the question of, could the town in some manner accommodate the proposed array and still protect the public's interest up at the top of the hill there. The way that was accomplished was, you don't see it on this map because this is the final result, but the array originally had been designed differently, and there was a portion of it that was in that northernmost row that extended further off to the west, out near the corner of the road there as it makes the turn. That was removed from the plan and relocated elsewhere on the hill so that they can get the full complement of solar panels that they were seeking, but stay more completely within the private property. They weren't able to stay entirely within the private property, and so the request is still before you that we quitclaim the amount that is shown on this map. We do believe, in summary, that based on the topography up there, based on the existing roadbed that's there, and based on the right-of-way that the town would continue to have the right to use, that the public's interest is being protected, would continue to be protected if you did approve the request that's before you this evening. I'd ask Steve if he has anything to add in terms of the operational implications of this, and then you probably ought to hear some more from Bob about what's actually the official action of the select board that you'd be taking in order to affect what's been requested.
I will say that the engineering tech from Public Works and myself met on site along with the supervisor of the project, and we walked the proposed easement area. And after we had this discussion, which Peter has described very well about this northeast corner, that satisfies our concerns of having the ability to access the piping and the water tank now and in the future.
All right, so before Bob speaks, I'm just going to seek to clarify. It sounds as though, and this is both for our information and also for the public, because this hasn't been discussed in public before, that we have a right-of-way up the top of the Exit 1 Industrial Park, and we're being asked to give up part of it to help build a solar array, or to allow a solar array to be built. And both town manager and director of public works are telling us that as currently presented, we'll continue to have full unfettered access as needed to town facilities at the top of this Exit 1 Industrial Park, and that ceding this limited portion of the right-of-way won't negatively impact the town's interest in any way. Am I hearing that correctly?
That is correct.
Very well put.
All right.
And the only thing I would add is that originally the town has a 25-foot easement right-of-way next to a 50-foot right-of-way. So we're only dealing here with giving up a portion, a 20-foot section roughly, in some places it's 18 feet, of the 50 feet. So that 30 feet that remains not only is perfectly adequate for the town's needs to go up the road, but you also have on the northern side of the town line the 25-foot easement. So in actuality, you still have roughly, if you take the 30 plus the 25, that amount of easement to protect the public interest.
We have legal right to that. I want to make sure the record is clear that from being up at the site, we know that the roadbed as it's currently configured sits on a relatively narrow area where it drops off quite steeply on both sides, both the north and the south. So part of what we were concerned about when we first looked at this, and what we feel has now been adequately addressed, is the concern that even though we have a legal right to use a larger amount of the land that's up there, the practicality of using some of that land is very difficult. It would require extensive site work and probably retaining walls in order to be able to use it. And as a result of that, we were pretty conservative. The proposers of the project would tell you that we haven't made this easy. They've been feeling a great sense of urgency to get this done, and we've worked as best we can to be expeditious about it, but we've been really vigilant about guarding the town's interest because it's a tough site. 75 feet is a lot of width, and we don't have 75 feet to work with up on the top of this hill.
Anybody else on the board?
Should also
Steve?
be noted that the Brattleboro Development Corporation, this is part of their easement too, correct?
That's correct.
And that they have approved this.
They are also quitclaiming not exactly the same portion as we are. They're actually quitclaiming more than what we are. And that'll enhance the town's rights on that easement area that Bob spoke about, as well as doing what's necessary in order to allow the array to proceed.
Anybody else on the board have any questions or comments? Dave?
The area above the highlighted area,
Yes.
that, which I would call not gray but beige, is that part of our easement there?
It's in Guilford, isn't it?
That's where you can see the actual road bed. As you come up, if you go over to where it says John Sites Drive in the upper right-hand corner, and then come along that roadway there where it says Gravel Drive, okay?
Yeah?
You can just follow it around that curve and then up. You can see that the road bed currently is actually outside of the 50-foot right-of-way and in the easement area. And then it comes into the right-of-way as it makes a turn to the south, up near the western edge of what you're looking at, and just immediately south of where the town's water tank is. It's marked Town of Brattleboro, volume 210, page 259. That, you can see how that curve brings the roadway down into the right-of-way, but otherwise the bulk of the roadway is actually in the easement, not in the right-of-way.
And Dick, where it makes that curve, we've retained, that's not where we're giving up any of the easement or right-of-way there, because that
Right.
is specifically needed, as Steve mentioned, to protect the road as it goes around. That's very steep there when you go out there on the site. So,
And there's no issue of the road, it already passes over the pipe, so there's no issue with the damaging the pipe.
That's correct.
correct.
Can you speak to the
I've reviewed the agreement.
right-of-way agreement?
Yeah, I've reviewed the agreement as well as with Jan's very good help, making sure that the meets and bounds on the map and the new map that we just received this afternoon comports with the new agreement that you have before you. It all matches up perfectly. So it's with that recommendation and based on everything staff has said, that from a legal standpoint, recommending that the board authorize this approval.
The only question I have is, I understand that we can't make this subject to moving any portion of the array if we later need to gain access, because you're telling us we're not going to need to gain access. My only inquiry relates to if the array is removed altogether, is it possible to structure the agreement so the land reverts to the town? And is there a reason to do that? It's not
okay.
consistent with quitclaim, but
Right, so yes, it would be possible, it's not as currently written that way. It would be possible to write it that way, but there is no reason based on the practicality and the site visit and research that's gone into that to really do that. Number one, you're talking about what's in Guilford, and the only area where we really need the extra width is already, we're not giving that part up. So it's legally possible, but practically not recommended.
won't protect us any better than we're
Right.
currently protected. All right. Anybody else have any questions or comments? So then the only operative inquiry right now has to do with whether we feel that we've had enough notice and the public's had enough notice for the board to act on this now, or whether we feel like the matter should wait until the next select board meeting to have had more time to percolate in public.
May I speak to
Yeah.
that question? This is very unorthodox to have come before you this way, where there's been no publication of backup materials for the public to have a look at, and we had some level of discomfort with that. The reason for it is what I described, that the the project organizers have a great sense of urgency, and we've already slowed them down in order to do our due diligence on this. If you feel it's not proper to go forward without the public being able to actually look at these documents, then we certainly could add this to the agenda for next Tuesday night. There would be a 6-day delay, but you would take action at that time instead of tonight. And the counterbalance to that is, while the documents only actually got finished today and only became available to us today, the notice to the public that this matter might be considered tonight was warned last Friday in preparation for this, because we knew that there was ongoing effort trying to bring this together in time that it might be acted upon this evening. So if you feel comfortable that the warning for the meeting and letting the public know that this topic was going to be addressed is sufficient public notice, then we believe that you're fully able to act on it tonight.
And I'll note that I authorized that after consulting with the town manager on Friday, because we recognized that it could be ready for tonight's meeting, even though I hadn't had a chance to talk about it with Kate, who I consult with when we're setting agendas. I did think it was appropriate to add it, given the timing. All right, I haven't heard anybody say that they feel that they need more time, so we're ready for a motion. There's a motion right here. Anybody wants to make it? You can make it? Yeah, I bet you would.
Yeah, it's another industrial site, perfect place for.
Another industrial
Even
site
John
solar
would
array.
like this one. So, bittersweet. Right of way. I move that we approve the right-of-way agreement reconfiguring the right-of-way along the Brattleboro-Guilford town line affecting properties of the town of Brattleboro water parcel, the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation, and Power Smith Farm Solar 2 LLC, and to authorize the town manager to sign the agreement.
We have a motion to endorse the right-of-way agreement and to authorize the town manager to sign. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 4-0. Is there any other business to come in front of the special meeting? Ready for motion to adjourn? We have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 4-0. We want to thank everybody who's been watching us live or recorded. We want to thank our ASL interpreter for coming out this evening. And we want to thank everybody who's been in attendance and presented information. Good night.